Hey, good afternoon, everyone. What is going on? It's Tolly Carr. It is HBCU game day. It is a Friday. We are getting ready. Oh, yeah, we are getting ready to bring you the news, setting you up for the weekend. We got a lot on deck. We got FAMU is losing a coordinator on that dark cloud defense. What does that mean? We're going to talk about that. We got some basketball. We got some baseball news. And we got a little Nuck If You Buck commentary. We'll save that for the end of the show. Vaughn Wilson is on deck. Simone Stanley is going to join us a little later. Let's start now with our guy, Vaughn Wilson. He's down in Tallahassee, Florida. What's up, Vaughn? Brand new microphone, looking good, man. Your plant. Vaughn, I can't keep a plant, man. I will kill a plant like it's nothing, man. You just always looking so tropical down there in Tally.
I cannot claim these plants. These are all my wife's doing. They would be brown if I was growing them or touch them. So I just sit in front of them and keep my distance.
All right, man. Let's talk about that FAMU defense. And a big shout out to Miles before we get underway. Miles, our director, always doing a great job. But Miles, turn your microphone off. There you go. I don't want to hear what you're doing back in the studio. I only want to hear Vaughn Wilson. Vaughn, FAMU loses Smitty Rock. He announced on social media last night that he is out, FAMU's defensive coordinator, that number 2 defense in the country. Talk about the journey of him getting there and what his departure means. I think it says a lot about his character, Vaughn, because I don't want to put words in his mouth, but it seemed like he was going to stay there until the head coaching situation was resolved. He did not seem like a guy who wanted to leave his kids in the lurch. That could be me just reading too much into it. But he did stick around until James Colsey was announced and introduced later this week, and he's now pursuing other opportunities. Talk to us. What does this mean?
Well, I talked to Coach Smith. He's a great dude, always easy, approachable. He's got a great sense of humor. If you don't think so, because he's always real serious and stern with the defense, but he's got a great sense of humor. And Smitty Rock is just a great guy. You know, what he's done over the years with Coach Simmons and with the defense, which actually is the trademark of the FAMU team, is the defense. Offense was good, but the trademark, as they say, defense wins championships. We can certainly attribute the 2023 championship a lot to the defense, which was for several weeks during the year the number 1 FCS defense in the country, ended the season at number 2. Coach Smith has a great resume of experience. He brought it in. He brought in big time systems for the players to learn. Brought in very complicated defenses. If you ever saw them play, it wasn't always base defenses. It was very complicated defenses, which made it much more difficult for offenses to digest how to attack it. We saw that defense. Without the turnovers, they literally held University of South Florida to literally 21 points, besides 2 touchdowns that were made off of turnovers last year. So FBS power, which won a bowl game this year. If you want to judge Ryan Smith's defense, look at that USF game. Had it not been for those offensive miscues, that's a totally different game. And FAMU only end up losing by 14 points after having 5 turnovers. That's a huge accomplishment by the defense. They weren't afraid to step up in front of anybody. Coach Smith, I talked to him, and his thing was looking at the best opportunity for his family. There's no secret that one of the things Coach Willie Simmons was fighting for was raises for all of his assistant coaches. In his mind, the assistant coaches were underpaid, and the package that they were seeking not only raised Simmons' salary, but would raise the assistant coaches. If you look at the hire of Colsey and the finances around it, it is a drop-off from the package that Simmons was offered. With that must come the assumption that there were no raises for the assistant coaches as well. And Coach Smith has earned and deserves a raise. His work speaks for itself. And I think at the end, it was, not in a negative way, but just wanting to earn the value of what he brought to the team.
So, Vaughn, is it safe to say, just from a business standpoint, that if you have a higher earning head coach, then that salary, or at least that scale, is going to trickle down to the assistants? If you get a new coach, I mean, business is business. You got a brand new coach, you're probably not going to pay him the same as a proven coach who's already won a championship and established himself. I imagine then that scale also will trickle down to the assistants.
Yes, I think that's what we're seeing here. And Coach Smith, he has a family, and he has to look out for that family as well. And he loved being at FAMU. He loved having the autonomy to create that defense. Coach Simmons, as he's often said, he didn't have to worry about the defense. He let the coaches do what they needed to do, and it was a great formula. He provided them what they needed, and they were able to be very, very successful. Very dominating defense, especially at times. It was, there were halves where teams didn't pass the 50-yard line in 2023. And that's attributed to what Coach Smith was able to do with the defense.
So, Vaughn, will the FAMU Dark Cloud defense be able to maintain its identity, its scheme, with the new defensive coordinator? James Colsey, of course, is a defensive-based coach from his playing days and his area of expertise as a defensive back. Do you think they can maintain that same identity, or will this be a new look, different style defense? I know you're not on the coaching staff, but just being as close to the program as anyone who's not on the staff, what are your thoughts?
I think you can see a resemblance of the defense that Coach Smith put in. What I like to say about what FAMU is, FAMU right now, by maintaining the coaches, the system that was put in over the last 6 years under Coach Simmons, the system is the system. You replace parts, and obviously we won't have Coach Simmons' personality on the offense, and we won't have Coach Smith's personality on the defense, but the people that worked with them help them to derive at those defenses. So what you'll miss is a coach making those calls on actual game day, but you'll still have the same processes, same plays in place. And I don't think it's as difficult when you retain most of your staff. Is Ryan Smith a big loss? Ryan Smith is a big loss. He was a fan favorite. Just like I say, a great job that just brought his lunch pail in every day and did an amazing job. Does this defense fall off the face of the earth? Absolutely not, because they've built talent, and that talent is familiar with the defense that they're running. So it just has to be someone step in and make those adjustments. And I think the defense will be the defense is talented. You got Gentle Hunt back in camp. You look at the name that I keep saying, Anthony Dunn Jr. You look at the defensive linemen that are coming back. It's going to be a great Rattler defense this year from the personnel standpoint alone. So all you have to do is get someone to nurture that into a solid defense. And I don't think that will be difficult, because FAMU was built on building a program. It was rebuilt by Coach Simmons and the staff on being a program. If you look at his interview with us, which was his first live interview and maybe last in-person interview after leaving FAMU, he said at the end of that broadcast, with their goals was to build a program that was sustainable. And if he was able to do that, it will show in 2024, because he or Norris Smith will be there. But I, in fact, think that a program was built that can be sustained.
All right, let's quickly talk about the offense before we move on. Vaughn Wilson joining us here on HBCU Game Day live from Tallahassee. Coach Colsey kind of hinted Rodney Hill was in the mix there at FAMU, and you kind of dug around a little bit. Is there anything new that you could tell us about the coveted running back who was at Florida State? Then he said he was going to FAMU. Then he said he was going to Miami. Then that tweet got deleted. And any information you can give us there on Rodney Hill, Vaughn?
I think like some of the other commits who recommitted after Coach Colsey was hired, they kind of wanted to play in this system. And I think when we started hearing all of these decommittals was during the time where it seemed like another coach was coming in. A coach was coming from outside, and I don't think these guys wanted to be a part of a remake of a team. They wanted to come in, and even with the absence of Coach Simmons, they felt that the system was still in place. And I think by the hiring of Coach Colsey, it reaffirmed that, hey, the system is still in place, that this team could be great again now. And you saw the recommittal from Rodney Hill. You saw the recommittal from the defensive back from UNLV. You see Gentle Hunt saying he's here for the spring. And you start seeing the players rallying around, making another run at it. So the hiring of Colsey was a big turn for FAMU into making it a known. Like I said, I have nothing but respect for Sean Gibbs. I wish him well at Fort Valley State. I wish he had not gotten the bad press that he got from the Rattler Nation in the way that it happened. It was sort of embarrassing, but on the other side, I understand they were reaching out because they had no options. They felt they didn't have a voice directly. So, those shots came via social media. Same thing with Coach Fred McNair. I understand he was in town. Several people called me who saw him and was like, Fred McNair is in town. It was the day before Colsey was, they had the press conference for Colsey. Another guy who I have nothing but respect for. I know he will reemerge. As you've said, I hate not seeing him in the SWAC, but he will emerge. He's a great coach, and several schools could use his services. So we expect him to come back. But I think by hiring Colsey, it was the circling of the troops. And offensive-wise, Willie Simmons did say to me, right after we got off of the interview, it wasn't on air, but he says, Coach Henry knows that whole offense. Coach Henry can run that offense. So he's very confident that offensive line coach Henry can run and keep FAMU's offense productive. We got a little hint because Colsey said, I'll get with Coach Henry afterwards as we talk about offensive personnel that we need to get and that sort of thing. So we could see Coach Henry take over offensive calls.
Well, I will say this. All is well that ends well, and at least this chapter of FAMU football has seemed to end well with James Colsey getting the job and everyone coming back and pointing in the same direction for the Rattlers. You see the belt back there? I know you happy Rattlers. I know. It's available at the HBCU Gameday Shopify store. Commerce is a beautiful thing. All right, Vaughn, let's continue to talk money. Miles, let's bring up the big payback. Give the drummer some. We published this article. There was some information that was out on social media this week about some big HBCU matchups, the money games, they call them, Vaughn. We got two screens for you. Let's start here on the first screen and just hang out here for a second. FAMU going to Miami. I know everyone's excited about that game. The payout is reported at $700,000. We'll start there, Vaughn. Are you more excited about facing the U, or are you more excited about the check?
I'm more excited about facing the U. Obviously, Miami is not at its best. The way this team is built, if they come in and can maintain that momentum, that could be a good game. And it could be a benchmark game, because last year the USF game was the benchmark. The way the team played USF, in my mind, I said they aren't going to lose any more games this season. There were a couple of close calls where, they didn't play their best, but it was matching up against a FBS team for 4 quarters. I felt that the team was good. Miami will be a good barometer. Miami could, You've seen some players transferring out, and we don't exactly know what's going on there. It could be a good game, and the Rattlers don't necessarily have to win that game for it to be a positive outcome. Just like I say, the USF game, besides the turnovers, was a big win, a moral victory. And I know Coach Simmons would cringe at that, and most coaches cringe at that. But as far as us fans, we could say that was a moral victory, because often when you see these games with the big payback, you see a big disparity in the score. And to go into USF and have a competitive game, if FAMU is able to be competitive against Miami, who knows what will happen. Now, as far as the $700,000, you're looking at about a $12 million budget. If I'm looking at the last stats, VP AD Sykes put out about the budget situation at FAMU. That's about 7% of your budget, 7-8% of your budget.
And that's the athletic budget or the football budget?
That's the athletic budget.
Overall, all athletics, $12 million at the last report.
Yes. Okay. Right. And so you're talking about around 7% of your budget in one game. That's a big win. That's a big win. So you get to help your budget by getting a big payday, which is more than you probably make on most home games. But you also get the opportunity for the team to show how well they are against talent at what is considered a level above.
All right, so let's look at the rest of the list here. Alabama A&M goes to Auburn. Well, thank you, Miles, as I was reading that there. Alabama A&M goes to Auburn. That's not a long trip. That's in-state. It's a comfortable bus ride there. It's just a tad north of $500,000. Morgan State at Ohio, a little longer travel there. Jackson State, ULM, that's interesting. If you think back to a couple of seasons ago, Jackson State was in that game and could have won. I believe they held ULM to no points in the second half, or maybe a field goal or two. They just couldn't score. But that was a very close game.
Very close game.
Against the FBS opponent there. So $350,000 for that game. Norfolk State at East Carolina. Look, here's the thing about East Carolina. Do you remember Sam Washington at North Carolina A&T? Bring me my money. We all remember that meme, right? Well, that was when North Carolina A&T beat East Carolina. So could Norfolk State do the same? Go to East Carolina, get a win, pick up a check? That would be good. $350,000 there. All right, Miles. We can go to page 2. Okay, Miles says it froze. He froze it. All right, so
okay. Well, anyway, looking at this graphic, there are two types of, I call them guarantee games. There are two types of guarantee games. Your higher guarantee games are where you're less likely to be competitive, and the competitor is normally a higher brow team in the FBS division. Then you have guarantee games, which are lower, which are actually the winnable games, which, like you see the East Carolina in there, like the FAMU Troy game. We don't know what that payout is. These are what I call winnable games, where it's more competitive. Sometimes it's teams that have just come up from the FCS division not too long ago, and normally the proximity is not far, so it's like a regional win-win for both teams. When FAMU plays Troy, FAMU used to play Troy in the FCS playoffs all the time, so it's just a 3.5 hour ride from Tallahassee, so the fans are familiar with that. That's like a no-brainer game. Travel expenses are down, but it's also possibly a winnable game. And so you have two levels. You have the high payout, FAMU got almost $900,000 to go to Ohio State some years ago, but the game wasn't competitive from the opening kick. Miami, I think this game is going to be much more competitive than that. And the Troy game will even be more competitive. As I see, was it Alabama A&M in Auburn?
Yes.
Well, that's not a far trip.
No.
That is a good bonus and boost to Alabama A&M's budget. Auburn is playing pretty good. So you say winnable? Who knows? That's why we play the game, but that's not really what you consider.
I would not go that
that's
far.
Not what you,
I would not go that far.
Not what you call a winnable. Jackson State at ULM, absolutely a winnable game. Morgan State at Ohio, is that Miami of Ohio? I think that is.
It's not Ohio State.
Because it doesn't say Ohio State. But it's a game that Morgan State could be competitive. You know, Wilson's got a good defense up there, and if he adds some offense to it, that Morgan State team is, I'm telling you, they may be the dark horse this year. We saw what he did for years at Bowie State, and now he's had some time to be in there. I expect Morgan State to be very competitive this year, so that might be one of those games that we put under our competitive list.
All right, we got page 2 here. We got South Carolina State at Georgia Southern, and these games are all in the roughly $325,000 payout range. Alabama State at UAB. I've been to an Alabama State at UAB game. I went to Alabama A&M UAB game. It was competitive in the first half. Would not be out of the realm of possibility in that one. Bethune-Cookman at Western Michigan. That might be the longest trip on this entire list. I did not go to my my vehicle app to see the mileage between Bethune-Cookman and Western Michigan, but that is quite a hump. And probably the shortest one, unless I'm mistaken, A&T at Wake Forest. You just drive from Greensboro over to Winston-Salem. About 25 minutes there. Take on an ACC opponent, get $325,000. I like that matchup.
I like the North Carolina A&T at Wake Forest. The Bethune-Cookman at Western Michigan, I'm not that big a fan of, but who knows, when you're trying to finish that schedule and the pickings get slim, you have to take what you can get. But, to move your team and that sort of thing for $325 from Daytona Beach to Michigan, I don't know.
Yeah, I'm looking this up in real time. Western Michigan is from Atlanta, 759 miles. So you do the math. That's just from Atlanta.
It's a 1,000-mile trip.
Yeah, then you go to Bethune-Cookman. That's 444 miles. So you were well over
1,100 miles each way.
Yeah. So that's that one. Better go up there and play good. Get it all out of your system. All right, but Vaughn, to put a ribbon on that, it just shows why, in more ways than one, football is king. Like, shout out to those kids who sometimes have to go to an SEC school and play, but that money puts a nice little dent in that budget in terms of the amount of dollars that you need to come through your program, not only for football, but for the entire athletic department each year.
Yeah. I'm also sure in that Miami budget, in the Miami game, they always love to bring the March 100 down. So they may be traveling to that game as well. So sometimes that figures in the higher numbers as well when they request the band. In several situations.
That's what UNC loved about the FAMU game.
Right.
Was that last year or year before last? It feels
year before last.
It was like dog years with FAMU football here.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that was an amazing experience. And hearing again, it was a competitive game for a big part of the game.
Yeah, the final score did not indicate how close that game was. Yeah.
Right. So when you stay competitive in these games, that's the key for HBCUs, to make sure that the game is competitive. It's okay to go and get the money. We have to make budget. But what you don't want to do is embarrass your school in the process. Coach Billy Joe cringes at these kind of games. When I went and visited with him last summer in that great interview we had with him, he cringes at him. You don't want your quarterback to get hurt. You don't want your running back to get hurt. You don't want your edge rusher, your left tackle to go down. But if you have NFL caliber players on your roster, even though it's a loss, we've seen, you go back to Titus Howard. Look, Auburn's on that schedule. You go back to Titus Howard, who's making buku money now with the Texans, a first-round draft pick as an offensive tackle.
it was that game, Alabama State versus Auburn. Look, Auburn wiped the floor with Alabama State, but he held his own in his one-on-one battles. And when they started talking about his draft stock, they went back to that game. Like, what he did in the SWAC was great, but he was able to also do those things in the game against Auburn, and that got him paid.
Well, we look at Earl. I mean, the best example I use is Earl Holmes. When Earl Holmes played at FAMU, of course, he was the Sheridan Defensive Player of the Year, the MEAC Defensive Player of the Year. But when FAMU played the University of Miami, he had 30 tackles, and Bush Davis kept saying we could not stop that 45. You know, when the scouts went back and looked at it, they was like, no, this dude is different. He did 30 tackles. He was all over the place, and he'll tell you. He knew that he had to perform well in that game, to get to the next level, 10+ year career in the NFL. So that is the positive of playing those games as well, is that the NFL scouts want to see you playing against the best competition, which is not always just in the HBCU realm. But when you play in these guarantee games and you're able to shine and your skill shows, they take note of it.
Yeah, we have the talent. It's the depth that catches up with you. Look, whatever your feelings are, you saw those kids go from Jackson State and do the same thing, if not better, in the Pac-12. Right. It's just the depth that catches up with you. That's why you see these games. You're like, man, it was pretty good in the first half, or they hung in there through 3 quarters. But when you get to that fourth quarter and, that backup offensive tackle is not as good as the starter and, he needed the rep, or the starter is just worn out because he had to, face a 2-deep line where he was in there the whole game. Those are the things that start to catch up with you. But do not think that at these positions and these one-on-one battles that we do not have the same talent at the HBCU level. Yeah, go ahead.
And also in these FBS versus FCS games, the FBS schools know that to make these playoff style points matter. So you're going to see them if they get the opportunity.
Oh, you got to beat them like a drum.
Score.
You got to beat them like a drum.
It's getting back to that now, and with the expanded playoffs and more teams will have an opportunity to make it to those playoffs. You best believe if a team has an opportunity to crush it, they're going to do exactly that.
Hey, you can't blame them. The game is the game. You got to keep up with it. All right, it is February. What did Punxsutawney Phil? It's Groundhog Day. What did Punxsutawney Phil say today, Vaughn? Or we got more winter or an early spring?
I didn't see what he said today, but I did see a meme that said I'm not a weatherman. I thought that was just too funny, but I haven't seen what the results were. But in Florida, it's been cold. What is it? 72 today in Tallahassee. Well, what's your definition for cold in Tallahassee? It's getting in the high 60s today, but it's been 30s and 20s.
Okay,
it's been 30s and 20s.
I'll give you the 20s. The 30s, come on, man. That's shorts weather.
Well, it's Florida people. We got to put on some layers and you start getting out in the 30s.
I'll have to go shopping. It's not even in your wardrobe.
Right.
All right. It is February. Let's talk a little basketball here. Let's take a look at the national TV schedule for basketball this weekend. All right, Vaughn, we talk about the big payouts in football. Here's a big exposure payout. Although John Grant will tell you, you can't pay any bills with exposure, but take the win where you can get it. On TNT this weekend, as we kick off the first weekend of Black History Month, Grambling, Jackson State. That game's going to be on TNT. They play a big game on TNT each year. The series actually started out on NBA TV that first year, about 3 years ago. I was fortunate enough to be on that call, on that game on NBA TV. But TNT, a different story. They're not going to call your boy for that one. But Grambling and Jackson State. And we got a doubleheader on the national TV this weekend as well. Bethune-Cookman at Alabama State. Men and women, that's on HBCU Go. Man, HBCU Go has really done a great job of bringing us basketball and football, just games we otherwise might not see that you can just, turn on your TV, just rabbit ears, find it in different places. So kudos to HBCU Go, Byron Allen, that entire team for what they're doing. But Vaughn, when you look at a game, go ahead.
I've talked to a couple of coaches. I talked to Reggie Theus and I talked to FAMU coach Robert McCullum, and they love what the commentators from HBCU go do. They make sure to talk to the coaches in advance and get some background so that when the game comes, they have a lot of background information. You know, with two
It's
and a half hours,
proper
3
production.
hours.
It's proper
Yes,
production. That's all. That's all.
They rave at how HBCU go handles and their professionalism. So that is a great network for our HBCUs to get the big school treatment for us little schools.
Well, you know, I don't even want to call it big school. Just do the job, right? Like, do the job.
Right.
I think the number one complaint I have fielded, and that I also have when it comes to HBCU sports and how they're televised, is it just doesn't look like what we normally see, and that just comes into proper production. And you'll see that on HBCU Go, and you'll definitely see that on TNT this weekend. So, Vaughn, I think it's super important, not to get on the soapbox, but to support that game each weekend on HBCU Go, but on TNT, because people are going to look at the numbers and say, hey, shoot, man, we have people tuning in all over the country. They really wanted this. You can see more opportunity, but if you know.
And the NBA plays on, and the NBA plays on TNT. Yeah, and the NBA plays on TNT, so people are used to turning to that channel for good basketball. Right. So the crowds need to be up. Our schools need to go support the games, the bands, the cheerleaders. We need to. We don't just represent Grambling and JSU with that game. You represent all HBCUs and the ability for all of us HBCUs as a collective to make money.
Yep. So make sure, look, DVR, do whatever you have to do. Let's take a quick peek here at the MEAC men's standings. We try to break our basketball conversation into segments. We talked women's hoops last, or actually a week before last. We had Liv for Hoops on. She really broke down the women's game. We talked about the men a couple of weeks ago. We had Lavelle Moten on. Let's take a look at the MEAC standings for the men right now. Show the MEAC some love since the SWAC is swallowing up the national TV schedule this weekend. Norfolk State and North Carolina Central. Look, that's who it's going to come down to. North Carolina Central defeated Norfolk State. They gave them that one loss, but South Carolina State snuck up and got North Carolina Central. So we could have some spoilers in there with Dell State and South Carolina State. But so far, the teams that just a little bit above everyone else, Norfolk State and North Carolina Central. You see Howard, Morgan State, Coppin State, and University of Maryland Eastern Shore down there trying to get it together. So before you know it, we're going to have tournaments here. The CIAA tournament's going to be, in 3 weeks? Before February is over, it's going to be here. We got the SIAC, MEAC, and SWAC. So it'll be March Madness before you know it. All right, let's talk about. Go ahead.
You know what I love about the MEAC? What I love about the MEAC is, you see Howard down there at number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. By the time the season ends, they could be number 2 or number 1. That's what I love about the MEAC. It's very competitive. A team could get hot and really just change the whole dynamics. Or Howard may get hot or South Carolina State might get hot and show up at the scope and change everybody's idea of who's the big dog. So that's what I love about the MEAC. It's really competitive. You got your Norfolk States. They're going to be up there. Lavelle Moten's going to be up there. But, Delaware State, South Carolina State, Howard, neither one of them are out of the mix.
Yeah, South Carolina State's already knocked off Central one time. So playing that spoiler game, but we will. It's a tight race. Look, you look 4-1, 3-2. That the top half of the league, pretty much still in it, with the exception of Coppin and Maryland Eastern Shore. It looks like they're trying to get it together. All right, let's bring her in, Vaughn Wilson. She is our girl. Woo, 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 woo. We cannot get the show done without Simone Stanley. What's up, Simone?
What's up? I'm doing good. Been all around everywhere, but glad to be back.
All right, so we got to talk a little baseball, Vaughn, and Simone leads the way on our baseball coverage. And we're going to start here. The Cactus Jack is coming up. It's going to be a baseball classic down in Houston, Texas. We got a graphic here showing you the teams involved. We have Southern University, Grambling, Jackson State, Prairie View, A&M, Texas Southern, and Alcorn State. So it's an all SWAC affair at Minute Maid Park. That's coming up right after Valentine's Day, February 16th through the 18th. Simone, a little round robin. Everybody will get a piece of the action there. You cover baseball. I mean, your little job you have outside of game day. You're around a lot
Big
of
money job, you know.
Did you hear that love?
You know how they
when
do,
people throwing shade, they use love.
Oh yeah. Oh, I know, Vaughn. I know.
I gotta. It's all love. It's all love. I gotta give her a hard time. But what do you think about the start of HBCU baseball? And you covered extensive. Look, you've been on MLB Network. You've been everywhere. What is the vibe around HBCU baseball?
It's lit, and especially now because we have all these new all-star and early season tournaments like the Cactus Jack one. The Cactus Jack brings out a lot of big names in HBCU baseball, Black baseball, and just Texas culture in general. Of course, you have Travis Scott, who's going to be out there. You have Houston legends like Paul Wall, who was out there last year. So it's a mix of baseball and hip hop, usually what you get in basketball, but now they're bringing that culture over to baseball. So this is a really exciting event. I wasn't able to go last year, had a lot of FOMO watching it. Won't be able to go this year either, but it looks like a blast.
It seems like, and guys, Vaughn, you can jump in here as well. It seems like there's a lot of people with money trying to get this, and I applaud them. More participation, more awareness around people of color, Black folks, African Americans, whatever you call us in 2024, and the sport of baseball. Vaughn, when you and I grew up, either, we played, our cousin played, our brother played, baseball was a part of our day-to-day in our sports conversation, in our sports life. Kind of changed over the years, but guys, you look at the contracts. Well, Ohtani is the highest paid Major League Baseball player. His contract is $700 million over 10 years. Highest paid basketball player right now is Steph Curry. I think his is like $215 or something like that over 3 years. It's more money up top, more roster spots. It's not all about money, but there's just so much opportunity in baseball that we don't take advantage of like we once used to. Not saying that's our fault. There's several factors, but there's people out there trying to push more participation.
Well, when we grew up, going back to those decades ago,
70s,
we would round up the kids in the neighborhood and we would play baseball. We didn't have we didn't have always a bat. Maybe one person might have a bat in the neighborhood, and we play with a tennis ball, so we didn't always have to have gloves. But nowadays, kids are so much more into video games, you can't get them to go outside, and baseball requires you to go out and play it over and over again. I see in baseball much like I see in the professional golf world, where you see the Major League Baseball and the PGA Tour trying to develop initiatives that will get people more excited, as far as Black people, more excited into those games. Major League Baseball has made great strides. The Gar, the Dawson, they allow people to play in Major League facilities, whether it's AAA or whether we go back to when FAMU and Central played at Fenway Park. I still remember that day as just like a life-changing day, and I just can't imagine, as I talk to players from that team and from Central's coach during that time, it's still a magical day. Baseball is magical. If you go out to a park and experience a baseball game, it's just one of the best sports. But trying to get young Black men in a football and basketball dominated society, as far as where they see it as popularity, when you see someone like Kyler Murray have a professional baseball contract but opt to play football, and we know he could have made multiples more money as a major league pitcher. When you see Jameis Winston, who was an amazing pitcher, had a great fastball, opt for football, that's kind of symbolizes what is going on in America. Football and basketball are just so much more popular. But just as you stated, Tolly, there are exponentially more dollars available in baseball.
And opportunities and roster spots. Simone, you're around young, elite high school kids. What do you see when you're at these baseball tournaments and you see these traveling teams and everything out on the field? Have you seen an uptick, a fall off? Is it stagnant amongst young black kids that you see out there?
I see a large wave of excitement coming from the black youth when it comes to baseball. And a lot of the guys that I talk to, they emphasize wanting to bring excitement to it. They emphasize wanting to bring swag to it. And you see the bat flips, you see the on base celebrations. And a lot of scouts say they don't like seeing someone celebrate a bat flip. They don't like seeing someone celebrate a base hit because that's an individual success versus team success. We know in football, they don't care about that. You're grittying, you're doing, your strap celebration. A lot of individual celebration happens in basketball and happens in football. But, the scouts, the higher up in baseball try to limit the individuality.
Is that changing a little bit? I feel like at the major league level, we've seen a little relaxing of the clutching of the pearls for every time somebody.
I feel like it's changing, and I definitely think it's a big push from the younger players and the younger MLB talent starting to change that. Because like I said, I see a lot of young players that's like, I want to bring swag to baseball. I want to bring flair. I want to bring my own personality. So I think it's definitely changing. I think the youth are really the ones that's driving that change.
Is it exponentially more expensive resources required to participate in baseball than other sports?
Yes, and there was an interview with Deion Sanders last year, and he was talking about why there's not as many black players that participates in baseball. He really broke down the numbers of just how much more expensive it was for him to compete and play in baseball than it was for him in other sports. The travel baseball scene is very expensive. You have to go to specific showcases to be seen by specific scouts. Those showcases cost a boatload of money. I was talking to a scout last week, and he was saying that even if a player is a top player, let's say you're ranked in the top 20 in your state, but if you stop going to those showcases and those specific events, they'll dock your ranking just because you're not paying to come to the showcases anymore. So if you're someone who doesn't have the money to invest in a tournament every single weekend year round, then it's going to be harder for you to get seen and get the recognition.
And these big distances, they have to travel from week to week?
All over the world, Tali. Well, not the world, all over the United States. A lot of it goes down in, where we are in the Southeast, but you have players that's on the West Coast that doesn't have the luxury of living in Georgia or living in North Carolina, where a lot of the hotbed of the talent is. So they have to travel from the West Coast all summer long over to the East Coast. So it's a pretty penny that's involved.
Yeah, go ahead, Vaughn. Go ahead.
And as we're talking about HBCUs and fielding the black baseball players, funneling them to HBCUs, an example here is one of the best young players here in the Tallahassee area is Chase Fuller, the son of Corey Fuller, and really the reason he didn't go with Deion Sanders, because Chase is developing as an 8th grader. Florida State offered him. He is committed to Florida State as an 8th grader. This kid has 4 more years to play. But if you see his swing, Corey Fuller has done everything from having Gary Sheffield to tutor him. He's in travel ball. They travel all the time. He's playing baseball year round. He's working out. He's doing what Simone says, the necessary things to go to the correct tournaments, to get the visibility and that sort of thing. But the problem for us HBCUs is that the larger schools are going to offer these kids right away. When they start seeing them show up on these, top performance baseball camps and those type of things, they're swallowed up by the larger schools, and some HBCUs never have an opportunity at them because by the time they're able to afford to scout these kids in high school, they're already committed.
Wow. So what is the recruiting like? Like, how do you get your kids? Look, FAMU's the defending SWAC champions in baseball. Like, what is their recruiting process? How do they go about enriching their program with players?
Well, I got to say, Coach Shoup, and I got to say rest in peace to Mike Martin, longtime Florida State University baseball coach. He and Shoup were together for 21 years at Florida State, and they made numerous trips to the College World Series. Shoup developed the pitchers on that team, and Mike Martin passed yesterday. So if we're talking about baseball, you got to give Mike Martin a shout out. But Coach Shoup, was a minor league player for the Braves. When he came into FAMU, he had an idea because he had coached on the high school level, the highest of the college level at Florida State, making several trips to the World Series. So when he came to FAMU, it was a natural for him. He was familiar with the junior college circuit, which is another avenue for HBCUs to grab players, because a lot of the top baseball players strategically will not go to a 4-year college. They'll go to a junior college because they can go 1 year at a junior college and actually be available for the major league draft. If they go to a 4-year college, they have to stay longer. I think it's almost to their junior year, if I'm correct. So you see a lot of great baseball players going from high school to junior colleges. And so HBCUs, if you see a lot of these rosters, they are smart now. They are grabbing these junior college kids who may be better than some of the kids that are actually on their team, because some of the top prospects might want that opportunity to go pro early, so they'll take the junior college route. So that's a way that FAMU and a lot of the HBCUs and the SWAC and the MEAC and the SIAC, and that's the way that they recruit baseball players. They have to pay attention to the junior college circuit, because most of the best players are not coming right out of high school going into college.
Simone, you've covered college baseball for us. CIAA doesn't sponsor baseball anymore, but the SIAC still does. How would you rate Division II baseball, D1 baseball, specifically in the HBCU space? Is it similar to football, where D1 kids are typically you think those programs are a little better just because of the D1, D2? Is it more equal footing in baseball?
Are you saying like HBCUs going up against like your Power Fives?
If Albany State played FAMU in football, you're going to be like, okay, FAMU should win this game. If they played in baseball, is it the automatic assumption? Oh,
yes, because of the pitching staff.
Pitching,
it's a big gap in the pitching in HBCU baseball and your top baseball programs. And then the top programs have deeper pitching staff. So you might have an ace on an HBCU level, but then behind him in the pitching staff is weaker arms. So obviously he's going to have to come out. He's going to need a rest. And that's where, the other team tends to, take advantage, rack up runs and things like that. I don't think it's necessarily, in the infield and outfield play. I don't think it's a large gap, but I think the biggest gap comes on the mound.
How many HBCU coaches do you see out on the circuit? You're around these events with the travel teams and high schoolers. Do you see many HBCU coaches out on the recruiting trail?
Now, I will say I have not spotted that many. No, I haven't. I know I specifically ran into a couple of Jackson State scouts last year, but I don't think I've bumped into many HBCU scouts. But again, we have hundreds of scouts on campus at our larger events, and not just college scouts. We have pro scouts, because at the top events, a lot of these high school guys are going right to the pros. Right. So there's several pro scouts, several college scouts, hundreds of scouts on campus. So it would be hard for me to, see everybody. But I know I have specifically seen Jackson State scouts a few times.
Vaughn or Simone, how do you figure out, or do you have to figure out, like, which kid is going to be on the college track? Which kid is going to be a pro? I would imagine if they're dead set on being pro and have that talent level, then you let that one slip by. Like, how do you kind of filter out that talent?
Well,
I think Simone.
Go ahead,
Simone.
Well, a lot of.
All right, rock, paper, scissors, go.
Ladies first. Ladies first.
Just because a player if you're a high school talent, just because you are being scouted by the pros and you have the option to get drafted, a lot of players end up getting drafted and actually opt back for the college route, just because they'll have more hands-on development, knowing that even though they're drafted, they're going to be going to, the minors, and they might not get as much attention when it comes to their development versus getting way more attention and development on the college level. So I see a lot of players that have the option to go pro, but opt to go to college so they can get more intense, more detailed, more hands-on development. So I believe that when it comes to the high school players, that a college coach should continue to recruit any player because we see a lot of them that wants to still go to college.
All right, Vaughn, you had a point you wanted to make.
Yeah, I agree with Simone. High school baseball players have to make a decision. If they decide to go pro, most likely they're going to one single A baseball, which means a lot of long bus rides, not the best hotels. So they have to judge that against, all right, do I go ahead and get in the league on the lower level and work my way up? Or do I enjoy a year of development in college and get a chance to have a conference tournament and continue to have the camaraderie and the crowds and the excitement of college baseball? I think that plays into the decision that they have to make. What is their environment going to be if they decide to go pro and you're playing single A ball, which we know it's a proving ground. And I would say most players that go to the major leagues never make it out of single A. So players have to just decide how good they are, how prepared they are to go to the major leagues, to make it from 1A up to AAA, to make it to the big show.
All right. We got the Bill Guard Classic coming up. That's going to be FAMU and Grambling. That's going to be Cool Ray, right?
Yep.
I'll say Atlanta. Simone will correct me, because if something is not within the city limits,
it's in Lawrenceville, Georgia.
I'm like Atlanta Metro. I'll just say Atlanta. If it's not Atlanta proper, Simone will correct me for sure.
Well, I went last year, so you passed by Atlanta on your
Exactly.
Look, what sounds sexier, Atlanta or Lawrenceville?
Well, you got to keep it honest. Don't have someone thinking they're going to be in ATL.
I mean, they be lying on Instagram talking about they in Atlanta, living in Conyers. So we got the Bill Guard coming up. We're going to have the Cactus Jack first. What excites you the most when HBCU baseball rolls around each year?
Well, for me, it's the talent. And I think that the Cactus Jack is really setting the tone. This season is going to be very exciting in HBCU baseball, specifically in the SWAC. It's a lot of talent. So when we talk about the Cactus Jack Classic, we have some senior talent that's going to be on display. But we also have a freshman that is going to be very exciting. So Prairie View A&M, they have Michael Dews. He is a senior right-handed pitcher. His sinker is in the high 80s, low 90s, fastball sitting in the mid 90s. He got to pitch at the HBCU Swingman Classic over the summer. So he's a guy that's going to continue to star on the mound. But Grambling State University, shout out to Coach Davin Pierre, because when you talk about being on the recruiting trail, Coach Pierre is that guy. So we have Martavius Primetime Bryant. This is a guy.
We have two prime time.
Yes, we have another prime time. And he has all the swag of, the prime time we all know, Deion Sanders. So Martavius, he is a center fielder, a freshman. He's out of Arkansas. This is a guy that I cover a lot in high school. He was committed to Arkansas, the Razorbacks. And for those of you that don't know, Arkansas is a powerhouse in baseball. That's what you would say is your Blue Buds in basketball. That is your SEC, your Georgia, your Alabama of football. Arkansas, the Razorbacks, they continue to bring in top talent, continue to put talent in the pros. He is from Arkansas. He was going to the Razorbacks, decommitted, and decided to go to Grambling State University because he wanted to put on for the HBCUs. He wanted to go somewhere where he is celebrated. He wanted to play with guys that look like him. So this is a guy that's going to be really exciting to watch. Top all-star talent. He already won Student Athlete of the Week at Grambling, even though the season barely started. So he's hitting the books hard already, and I can't wait to see what he does on the field. We're going to get to see him at the Cactus Jack Classic, and we're going to get to see him in Lawrenceville at the Ralph Gar Bill Lucas Classic. But this is one of the guys when I was saying, when it comes to the energy and the swagger, he has all of that. So he's one that, he's going to have the on-base celebrations, the chains, the fancy cleats, the arm sleeves, all this stuff that, makes the young kids excited and want to play baseball.
Vaughn, when we were growing up, man, part of it is seeing someone who looks like you that gives you the idea that you can achieve. Me and my cousin, when we were little, I'm 8 years old, is 1982, right? we all wanted to be Reggie Jackson. Like Reggie Jackson was everywhere.
How did that work out
Reggie
for you?
Jackson was it.
I mean, I didn't really want to be. I looked up to it. Look, none of my sports lasted past wiffle ball. Every sport, once you got past wiffle ball and Nerf, that was a wrap for me.
But I mean, there were a lot of greats though. You think of Willie Stargell, Dave Parker. I mean, the names just go on and on. The Andre Dawsons, the Hank Aaron's, the Dusty Bakers. We had a variety of great athletes.
I didn't feel like there was a lack of black.
Remember Joe Morgan used to do this before we back? Joe
Right,
Morgan used to cock back. There were so many things we knew about baseball players. We used to watch. I think we used to even watch baseball more.
And baseball as far cards, everything.
Yeah, baseball cards and the little plastic helmets. We had those as well. I think I got my love of baseball from my grandfather. And so I just think maybe farther back, exposure to people who had exposure to baseball longer, those influenced us to have our love for baseball. But
Absolutely. I think every black man our age, his grandfather took him outside and was throwing the ball to him and talking about, pictures and things he remembered. And there was that connection. And I even remember, it was a kind of a co-ed thing, like, your family reunion, you'd have, family softball games, and it was just a part of, your life. And it just kind of seemed to slowly not be a part of your life.
And now, as we're looking into this season of HBCU baseball, let me tell you, you can never count Omar out at Jackson State. Omar is an amazing recruiter. He's an amazing coach. And so the Tigers are never out of it. And then let me tell you, FAMU seemed to come out of nowhere. It's the stats show that Jamie Shoup is going to win a conference championship every other year. It's just a fact. He did it in the MEAC. He's doing it in the SWAC. But also, Bethune-Cookman, when the pandemic, their athletic budget took a big hit, and they're finally starting to recover. So Johnny Hernandez, the head baseball coach at Bethune-Cookman, is rebuilding. Listen,
because that was the showdown. That was the showdown in the SWAC championship game, right?
That's right. Let me tell you, Bethune-Cookman for a period was the baseball. They were beating, big college baseball teams that outside of the HBCU realm. 1 year they beat University of Florida in the NCAA regional, and they ended up playing University of Florida in the NCAA regional final in Gainesville. So Johnny Hernandez was on that staff, and he is there now, and he's rebuilding that program back. I would not be at all surprised if the Wildcats return this year. They've had a couple of years to rebuild. Resources are being put back into baseball. BCU is certainly a juggernaut in HBCU baseball, so look for them to rebound this year.
All right, we know Vaughn will lean a little Florida in his baseball and other sport politics. Let me go to our resident expert. Is FAMU going to run it back this year in the SWAC, Simone?
They definitely have a strong chance. I like what Vaughn said. It's definitely going to be between your preseason favorites are definitely Bethune-Cookman, Florida A&M, and Alabama State University. So Vaughn ain't lying. I mean, FAMU is popping. I mean, we talk about them a lot, but they're showing up in baseball and football. So buckle up. Get ready to hear about them belts. Get ready to hear about them Rattlers.
A belt, you said? Miles? Come on, Miles. Come on, Miles. There you go. Belt. Belt. Oh, yeah, there you go. Yeah, there we go. Right there. Right there we go, Miles. Yeah. That belt for sale. HBCU Game Day Shopify store. Look, football championship belt, baseball championship belt, you name it. FAMU's been getting it done.
Yep. Tennis and cross country. Don't forget them.
Hey, my daughter.
Don't forget the ladies.
That's all right. Tennis, open up that can. Have they knocked off any other big opponents this week? They started the week off.
Didn't
smoking.
I think they play today. At home. I think the home opener is today.
All right. Whatever makes you happy as a Rattler, you can express it through that championship belt. All right, guys. We had some expressions. Lord, what is the conference? Hampton and A&T.
CAA?
Yeah, there you go. I always want to say CIAA. Colonial. All right, Miles, let's go to it. It's our final story of the day. This is the Nuck If You Buck shot of the day. It was the end of Hampton and A&T last night. We got this photo online. The crowd was giving it to this one Hampton player, Vaughn. It turned out to be much ado about nothing. If you see the video, which you can see inside of our story of the recap at HBCUGameday.com, it was some wolf tickets, and he eventually walked off the court, but had to briefly be held back by security. But if a picture is 1,000 words, look at the Aggie cheerleaders. They were ready. They were not having any of hostility coming from the Hampton basketball player there. I think, Vaughn, the most dangerous woman in that picture, the far left, she's got that smile and that giggle. She is ready for the action. She's like, I've been waiting on this my whole life.
Listen, if you've ever been to Greensboro in a basketball game,
Club Corbett.
That's Club Corbett. That dog pound is not to be played with. They are serious. They're ready for war. That they are so unified. I'll never forget when I used to travel there with FAMU when I was sports information director. By warm up, the dog pound had given every player on your team a nickname, and they called them that nickname the whole game, the entire game. They would have a roster sheet, and whatever somebody yelled out as that person's nickname, I don't know if they wrote it on the paper, but they would all call them that nickname the entire game. And as a player, it would get you so annoyed, you'd be like this guy from Hampton.
It's one of the best basketball environments in college basketball. Simone, which face in the crowd there grabs you the most? I kind of like the dude. I assume he's with the Hampton staff. He just looks like he's over it. He's like,
he look lost. He look like he needs to get out of the way before he gets trampled. You talking about bottom right?
Yeah.
He looks like he needs to get out of the way before he gets trampled.
He's like, get on the bus. Come on,
right.
Let's go.
You know when you like pretending like you go, hold your friend back or whatever, but you really don't want the smoke. That's what he looks like.
Oh, A&T cheerleaders.
The police, you can't forget the policemen down there like, oh Lord, please get away from me.
That's a quality tackle position there. Not leading with the head. Got a lot of shoulder there.
Head to the side, the shoulder. Yeah, you could restrain somebody pretty good.
Hold me back. All right. Shout out to the A&T cheerleaders who remind everyone who comes to Greensboro, you do not want the smoke. All right, guys, this has been a HBCU Game Day presentation getting you ready for the weekend. Big plans for you this weekend in Tallahassee, Vaughn?
I am still exhaling from all that's going on, but I will be talking with the coaching staff to try to figure out a little bit more what's going on and talking to the players. And, the next big story is, I think, Johnny Chaney, who said he was in the portal. He's back with the team. So I think the pieces are falling back in place. So just try to get an account of that, what's going on as well. And also in our basketball coverage, we didn't talk about something that I wrote about. FAMU playing Jackson State this week in the women. In the end, Jackson State won the game by probably 20 points. But at halftime, FAMU was ahead. The new coach, Bridget Gordon, who was played under Pat Summitt, the first player Pat Summitt recruited out of Florida, out of DeLand, Florida, down where Stetson University is. If anybody's seen Lady Rattler basketball over the last decade, it's been a huge disappointment to a program that was once proud. But we're starting to see basketball being played. And I think she's going to build that program back to being competitive. If you want to see the story, it's on HBCU Game Day talking about Coach Bridget Gordon was the right selection. We got to give props to FAMU VP AD Tiffany Dawn Sykes for luring her to FAMU. It was a great selection. You're starting to see the fan base get excited because we're seeing great, solid basketball being played again.
All right, Simone, you are always on the move. As you tell me, I'm chasing the bag this weekend. Where you going, Simone? Tally, the bag is everywhere. You just have to chase the bag.
Yeah, I mean, it don't be sitting still. So I was at the Shrine Bowl for HBCU guys out there representing. So hopefully you guys checked out all of that content. Make sure you guys, click, watch, like, comment, all that. And then I was at the Senior Bowl this past couple of weeks, not past couple of weeks, y'all, it's been a long time. These past couple of days. So we had one HBCU player representing Willie Drew. He's a cornerback out of Virginia State University. That interview should be dropping today. You know, if they let me go, like I'll be trying to give y'all the content. Holly might be up here talking, but
we need you. You're the MVP.
Willie Drew looked really good to me, and he was so locked in. This was my first time having a conversation with him. Very, very serious guy. You know, as a cornerback, you got to be serious. You out there on the island, you got to lock somebody down.
They can be kind of diva-ish sometimes.
Some of them, yes. I'm not going to get into those guys, but Willie Drew's brother was out there, so I was out there, nondescript. I didn't have anything HBCU Gameday on, and he came up
giving you anything HBCU Gameday.
Not anything that fits well, not anything that is catered to Black women.
Sorry.
Some men's shorts.
Right, we'll work on that.
Some men's hoodies.
Blame Waleed. Don't blame him.
But Willie Drew's brother was like, "Oh, you look familiar." He was like, "Are you HBCU Gameday?" I was like, "Yeah." He said he played baseball at Virginia State, so he's seen some of my baseball stuff. So we be everywhere. But look out for that. This weekend I'll be at Clark Atlanta University's home opener. Lord, Clark, let's play some good baseball this season. One of my friends is on the team. So let's play for some good Clark.
Who do they got? Who does Clark have this weekend?
Virginia State. So a lot of Virginia State going on with me. Willie Drew's brother. Now Clark versus Virginia State baseball triple header. HBCU Gameday is where you'll be able to find what went down there.
All right. Sounds good. All right. She's Simone Stanley. He's Vaughn Wilson. I'm Tolly Carr in Atlanta. For Miles in the back, the entire crew. You guys enjoy your weekend. We'll talk to you soon right here on HBCU Gameday.